When you think of luxury automobiles, there's no doubt that Ferrari comes to mind. In fact, the company leads the pack in the luxury car, ensuring every car has both power and style. While less than 10,000 Ferraris are made every year, the cars they produce are made with exceptional care and almost entirely by hand. This business model has been wildly successful, and the company is now worth an incredible $53.9 billion. But who started this now worldwide luxury car empire? You may be surprised to learn that a young, poor Italian boy with no education was the genius behind Ferrari. Enzo Anselmo Giuseppe Maria Ferrari was born on February 20, 1898 in Modena, Italy. He was the second son of Alfredo Ferrari and Algisa Bispini, who worked hard to provide a comfortable life for their children. Alfredo, the son of a grocery store owner, decided the best way to provide for his family was to open a metal workshop in their home. They certainly were not wealthy, and they did not prioritize education for the boys. Therefore, Enzo did not attend school often, and by the time he was an adult, he had no official education. But his lack of education didn't matter much at first because as soon as World War I began, Enzo enlisted as a teenager to help fight for Italy. While Enzo was fighting in the north of Italy, both his father and his older brother, Alfredo and Alfredo Jr., sadly died of a flu epidemic, which had made its way around the Italian countryside. So after the war, Enzo desperately needed to find work in order to put a roof over his head. While Enzo was thinking about the various job options he had, he remembered a day that was forever seared in his memory, the first day he saw a race car. It was 1908, and Enzo was only 10 years old when he witnessed the Circuito di Bologna race, and personally saw Felice Narazzo's victory. From that moment on, Enzo was completely infatuated with racing, and he knew that he wanted to work in the industry in some way, but hopefully to race himself. Fortunately for Enzo, he did get a job in the automobile industry as a test driver for a company called CMN based in Milan. With a job that paid the bills, Enzo started focusing on what he really wanted, racing. He drove in his first race in 1919 when he was only 21 years old. He did well in the race and raced again that year. After proving that he was a solid driver, he got an even better position with a famous automobile manufacturer, Alfa Romeo. A few years later, Enzo won his first ever Grand Prix at the Savio circuit in Ravenna in 1923, and he went on to win 3 races the very next year. So within only 5 years of his very first race, Enzo was known in the industry for his incredible racing and was considered one of the best in the business. By 1932, Enzo felt as though his racing career was complete, and he decided to retire from driving and focus his time and energy on managing production at the factory. He was still working for Alfa Romeo and was extremely involved in his racing team. In fact, in addition to working in the factory, he also put together and then managed their widely successful racing team. Because Enzo understood both the cars and the drivers, he was the perfect man for the job. But by 1939, Enzo decided it was time to go out on his own. He left Alfa Romeo and started his own company, Auto Avio Costruzioni. The company provided car parts to racing teams around the country, as well as producing its own racing cars. And only 1 year later in 1940, Enzo created 2 racing cars for the 1940 Mille Miglia. However, Enzo's manufacturing plant was forced to stop making cars and parts only a few years later when World War II arrived and Italy required all factories to start making weapons. And that wasn't the only way the war affected Enzo's business. Sadly, his factory was bombed by the U.S. Air Force, and after the war, he was forced to open a new plant, this time in Maranello. Luckily, by 1947, Enzo was up and running once again, doing what he loved, making race cars. He produced the first car with the Ferrari name, the Ferrari SPA, and in 1948, he established the first Ferrari racing team. It only took 1 year for Ferrari racing to make a name for itself, because in 1949, one of his drivers won their very first race at the 24 Hours of Le Mans. Though while it was the first win, it certainly wasn't the last. Ferrari continued to win races across Europe over the next few years. Many reports state that Enzo wanted his drivers to want to win so badly that he even encouraged rivalry within his team, hoping to encourage the men to drive faster and faster. Due to this pressure, 8 Ferrari drivers lost their lives in races from 1958 to 1971. While some say that Enzo Ferrari's methods were extreme, there is no doubt that his drivers were some of the best, fastest, and most competitive in the industry. But unfortunately, even though it was making quite the name for itself, the company wasn't actually making significant profits because racing was such a niche market. By the mid-1960s, Ferrari was still almost exclusively making race cars. At that time, the company needed an influx of cash and, realistically, also needed to start building cars for the masses instead of just race car drivers. But everything changed in 1969 when Fiat purchased 50% of Ferrari. With the money and Fiat's influence, Ferrari was able to start building passenger cars that would actually make them and Fiat money. Throughout the 1970s, the Ferrari vehicles made were intended for everyone, but that didn't mean the cars weren't fast. In fact, even though the general public could now purchase Ferrari cars for the road, they were known throughout the industry for their speed and race-like designs. But while Ferraris were widely known for being high-quality cars, the name wasn't nearly as popular as other established brands such as Aston Martin, Jaguar, and Lamborghini. It wasn't until 1984 with the Ferrari Testarossa that Ferrari really got its name on the board in regards to high-quality luxury cars for the road. Shortly after, they created the Ferrari F40, which was even more popular. The car was incredibly cool, had a fighter jet-like design, and was therefore used in the popular TV show Miami Vice. The appearance of the F40 in Miami Vice changed Ferrari forever. Millions of viewers now wanted a Ferrari, and the company became one of the top luxury automobile brands almost overnight. While the F40 was gaining international recognition for its cool look, it was also breaking records within the industry. In fact, the F40 was the first car to ever break the 200-mile-per-hour barrier. The F40 was also special in one other way. It was the last car that Enzo Ferrari would work on personally. Enzo passed away on August 14, 1988 in Maranello, Italy, at 90 years old. Although he would never see Ferrari become a multi-billion-dollar empire, it's safe to say that Enzo was able to see his dream of making some of the world's fastest and most popular racing and passenger vehicles become a reality. He dedicated his life to cars, and his love and passion for vehicles showed in every one that Ferrari made. However, while Enzo undoubtedly created this empire, after he passed, it became an even bigger enterprise than he likely could have imagined. Throughout the 1990s, Ferrari continued to produce impressive cars that were now beloved by all around the world. And by the time the new millennium arrived, Ferrari was still making some of the fastest and most impressive luxury cars ever sold. It's important to understand that although Enzo was gone, his influence on the brand was certainly not. His team continued to follow his instructions and vision when creating the new vehicles. And of course, the name Ferrari, as well as his signature logo, the prancing horse. Although the Ferrari horse is now an internationally recognized symbol, many people don't know the story of how it became Enzo's logo. Here's what happened. In World War I, fighter pilot Francesco Baracca painted a prancing horse on the side of his plane. And a few years later, in 1923, years before Enzo would start his own automobile company, he met Francesco's parents at one of his races. Apparently, Francesco's mother, Countess Paolina, told Enzo that he should paint the prancing horse on the side of his race cars for good luck. Enzo did exactly that, and the horse was such good luck throughout his racing career that he decided to use a variation of the design for the logo of his company almost a decade later. Of course, by the time the 21st century arrived, the prancing horse was absolutely synonymous with Ferrari, and is now one of the most recognized logos on the planet. And it wasn't just the logo that's famous around the world. The cars themselves were some of the most popular on the market. They continued to make new and impressive models that people were dying to have. In 2014, after years of working with Fiat, the board of directors of Ferrari decided that they wanted Ferrari to be a standalone company once again. They took the company public and were finally free of Fiat. Today, Ferrari is still one of the biggest automobile companies on the planet, with an amazing net worth of over $53 billion. The company still dominates in racing, just as Enzo would have wanted, as well as the luxury vehicle industry. And And now Ferrari is working extensively to provide electric and sustainable cars for the future. Ferrari is spending quite a lot of time, money, and energy on ensuring they can create hybrid and completely electric models that still perform as well as the standard Ferrari vehicles. And it seems that by working tirelessly to keep up with modern technology and preferences, they will head into the second half of the 21st century with immense success. To think that the Ferrari name and empire was all created by a poor Italian boy with no education, but a deep love of racing is almost unbelievable. But that is exactly what happened. Hungry for another fascinating business story? Click on the following video to hear the crazy story about the boy who created Papa John's out of a broom closet.